Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let you off with this.
To 10 inches on Gus and hopefully, they said 8 today.
Supposed to get some more.
I have an extra agenda.
I like it. Oh.
What's that?
We don't have-
I have an extra agenda.
Oh, here, I can look what the.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
Okay.
I have an extra one.
What's on it?
Yeah, that's all perfect, yeah.
Oh.
I was gonna use my computer just at 70%. And this is a middle table committee,
Uh-huh.
different types.
Did Mark send you a picture?
He did not. I didn't know, I didn't want to say. Oh, people,
No.
his cousin, Jake,
Yeah, it is kind of important.
died
Oh, you know what? I did.
6 years younger than me.
And he said that he wasn't gonna be able to the day after.
Yeah.
Dad's funeral Saturday, so I didn't want to I figured he had a lot going on, so I didn't text him or anything.
Yes, he did say something about that.
No, it needs to be whoever the county clerk's designee is. No, I'm thinking. Temporary. They'll do the same thing.
Doing.
Good, how you doing? Nice weather.
Yeah. So do you know how much snow we're supposed to get Wednesday? I've heard like everything from 1 inch to
We just talked about.
8 to 10, is what I keep hearing. Like, ugh, I'm gonna go with 1.
Good with millions. And what's the error margin that other people get, Ashley?
Tracking them.
Isn't it like 100% off you can be?
You bet, but I can show you. I was showing Phil when you walked in the spread in the models. So the European model and the NAM are showing us on the gradient, so we could get anywhere from like maybe 1 to 3. But then the American model, bam, has us right in the bullseye of like 10 inches. So that's where forecasting becomes quite difficult. Yeah.
Got this.
Okay.
They even got a book of excuses.
Well, I hope not.
Cool. Sure.
Let me know if you think. 17th. I should recruit. Didn't work.
It says that tearing the whole hill down, all the fences, all the signs.
Down before the snow comes, right?
Yeah, and I know we'll be calls if we get them.
But I'm just too actually
I never thought, yeah.
Perfect.
Everybody be wondering if you're open.
Sure.
And I don't know, I can just.
It's not gonna last, it's gonna be,
Okay.
a couple days. It'll be back
No,
where
I don't
50.
think
Gotcha.
Like I said, I can
It's a mess, it just makes.
check it out, or if you think somebody else, I'm on the regional planning commission, so that's why.
Are you interested in sitting on the visions?
And
Okay, this is something, Phil, that probably should go through tourism, I think. Because it looks like they're in the process of doing their 5-year plan too.
that's good administration right there. See how she just passed it right along.
Well, because we oversee, we get reports from IPBEC and we get reports from the Northwest Wisconsin Tourism Committee. So this looks like it fits in that.
And so it's vacant for Rusk County. So the tourism, is it really true that the hotel tax money is on hold until May before they give the balance to the chamber for other ideas?
I thought they were holding back.
Just a little bit. Okay, that's true.
I believe so, yes, was it Stu Moore who gave us that update?
Yeah.
So,
Because that's what I was just talking to Carrie about, was doing a like agro-tourism try again with the kind of like art on the flambeau, but with farms for farmers market week and the fair are the same weekend. You do a little know your farmer.
and see that might be Saturday.
I was in Ohio. But, I guess
Don't worry, we
farm
talked-
animal
we
food.
talked about you anyways.
Oh. Hey, Tammy said you had a good turnout. Let me know if you want me to go or recruit somebody or what the deal is on that later.
Yeah, I guess the question would be if this is like committee of committees design thing.
Yes, it would be committee on committee deciding that, but anyone to put forth like a letter of interest.
Yeah, well, Kathy's interested in it. That's pretty good. We get letters of interest. You need this back.
We can make a copy. Or,
Send me something to remind me. That's
okay, let's make a copy.
okay.
Make a copy of it. I'll see you again tomorrow.
I think you will.
Rock and roll.
Who calls the meeting to order?
Oh, who calls the meeting to order?
I will.
Oh, sorry, I always forget that slow.
Okay, I don't know what the
Are
clock.
you the one that made the agenda?
No, I'm just taking minutes for Connie today, so
Okay.
I didn't know I had to call. the
Because we
meeting
didn't
order.
put elections.
Just told
in
me.
it.
Yeah,
again.
next time, make sure we put elections on there.
The reason there were no elections on here is because you're down one spot and committee on committees is meeting the 24th, I think, like in a week.
Yeah, but this one was assigned by the chair anyways. This whole committee was. So the committees want to decide the next person. It'll be the next chairman, assign the next person to this.
What does that have to do with elections though?
She doesn't have elections till we have all 5 of us.
That was what was discussed after Mr. Caleb resigned, yes. Mhm.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order then at 3:30. And then I'll call for nominations of the chair for the ad hoc roles and responsibilities for this meeting only due to lack of a chair or vice chair.
I nominate Kurt.
Oh, jeez, second.
We have them.
And Andy are both on. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations?
Move to make a, yes, unanimous vote for Kurt.
I second that.
I ask if there's any more discussion.
Any more discussion?
Unless you really don't want to do it.
I'm fine.
Can I ask a question? Can you actually do something that's not on the agenda?
Well, we need somebody to run the meeting. That's what we did last time, just for the
I
one.
know,
meeting.
but John was the chairman of the meeting, correct?
He was just for that meeting,
He was a temporary.
For that meeting?
only for that meeting. He was
So
just
that wasn't on
temporary
that
for that
agenda
meeting.
either.
I don't know that that's still legal, that you can actually do something without it being on.
Well, how do we have a meeting then? Do we just not have a meeting if we don't have anybody to run it?
Yep.
I think this is what they did last time according to Robert's rules, correct? That you can, if there isn't somebody, you just do a temporary one for one meeting.
Well, no problem with that, but it still should have been on the agenda.
Didn't make the.
Is the clerk busy? Or she can't come in and explain this? Yeah. 'Cause that would be,
And I think Jill did the agenda, it says, right? But this is exactly what we did last time, so I would say we're good. You agree?
Yeah, we have Andy Phillips on here, so I mean, if there's a concern whether this is appropriate or not, we could ask his opinion.
Is that my cue? And right on cue, there we go. Good afternoon, everybody. I think the election of a temporary chair or presiding officer at the committee is not an item of business that raises concerns on the open meetings law because it's not taking any sort of official action or direction on the part of the committee. It's more or less having a facilitator to facilitate a good operating meeting. That would be my impression.
Okay, perfect.
Rich opined the same last month, so.
There's no other discussion, then we can vote on that. So all in favor for the motion on the unanimous casting ballot to run the chair for this meeting only, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Right.
All yours.
thank you. Okay, so I guess I'll call the Monday, March 7th meeting of the ad hoc role Responsibilities Committee to order. And we were given some homework. I accomplished some of it. I don't know how, but review provided administrative and administrative coordinator job descriptions, which I did print them out and did some highlighting on them if anybody else wants to. And then in that, item A is their language in these descriptions that is inconsistent with their responses given last meeting. Anyone have any comments on that?
Kind of just went through
Yeah, I didn't.
all of them and I marked the ones that the parts I liked and disliked.
Yeah, it's, the same thing I did. So
I didn't like break it down into
I didn't either.
that, but I did, go through all the job descriptions and
and that's what I did too. So I don't know. Any other comment on that or?
To be honest, I didn't see a lot of difference between the county administrator and when came to the back where the administrative coordinator. It seemed like that was very similar. But each one of these counties have different, they ask different things of the administrator. So it seems like there's quite a range that set as to what they can do and can't do. Did everybody see that? Or
Pretty much what I got out of it too.
Some of the administrative coordinator positions, just like an administrator position, other than that, if you read that, whatever statute is that covers the county administrator, that's 59.18, a lot of them just reference that. So you have to basically go back to that statute to look at exactly what that lays out. But I mean, a lot of them were given the oversight, given the supervisory authority.
It looks like you could basically give that same job description to an administrative administrators. Stuff.
So do we want to ask
Yeah.
Andy or Sarah about that?
Any comments from?
Since Sarah's not going off of mute, thanks, Sarah, I'll jump in. I think that the whole concept of trying to place administrator duties under 5918 into an administrative coordinator position, you can certainly replicate to an extent. The thing I will caution, however, is that there are circumstances where the statutes prescribe a particular role, for example, for a department head and for a committee, depending upon whether you're an executive administrator county or an administrative coordinator county. I'll bring up two of the most prominent examples. First is the Highway Committee. Under Chapter 83, the role of the Highway Committee is much different under an administrative coordinator than it is under an administrator. There's nothing you can do with a job description to replicate what Chapter 83 of the statutes requires. We can't contravene state statute. All right. So your Highway Committee is going to maintain a lot of authority under the administrative coordinator model, regardless of what the job description looks like. The other one is with Health and Human Services. Under 46.23 of the statutes, the role of the Human Services Board is much different in an administrator county than an administrative coordinator county. Again, we cannot go against what 46.23 of the statutes requires of us. And so while you can replicate much of what is contained in 59.18 in ordinance or job description for your administrative coordinator, you cannot fully replicate the administrator role in the administrative coordinator role, if that makes sense.
It does. It's just that, where do you, that 83, statute 83, I mean, I guess I didn't, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see that in some of the job, it doesn't explain that in some of these job descriptions on how it affects other portions of the county government or other portions of the county operations.
Yeah, and
What
I think
others?
that's what, That's what
Okay.
makes frankly working with counties so fun is that we've got all sorts of different statutes and requirements that impact us that have been around for a very long time. And so you will have counties that in their administrative coordinator job description, it looks an awful lot like administrator. And I think there are a lot of people that think that that person acts like an administrator without really digging into some of the concerns about committee role and board role in an administrative coordinator county. I can tell you that I've had firsthand experience in counties where they've had disputes and issues arise because they thought that there was a faction of the county board, for example, that thought they were delegating essentially administrator duties to the administrative coordinator, but they couldn't because the statutes do not allow that sort of delegation in those circumstances. So I've seen those issues arise, which is why when I speak to organizational form within counties, the administrator form is the cleanest because it's a clean, we know exactly what the role of the committees are. We know exactly what the role of the administrator is. Now, I'm not suggesting that's what Russ County needs to do. I'm just telling you that from my viewpoint, from a statutory clarity perspective, that's what you get with the administrator model.
Andy, you got some examples of some of the things that weren't allowed to be delegated. Counties.
I'm sorry, I couldn't pick up on that. I don't know if it was.
Do you have some examples of some of the responsibilities that were not delegated in certain of those counties?
And so are we talking about, for example, with the highway committee in particular, or the particular disputes that arose in those other counties?
You mentioned that some of the counties thought they were delegating some of these responsibilities to find out they could not delegate these responsibilities. So I was wondering if you had specific examples. That may make a difference on what we look at it, is depending on if we see an issue here or not.
Yeah, and so what I have seen is, I'll give you a particular example I confronted 2 years ago in a county with a county administrative coordinator. Is the job description for that administrative coordinator talked about the administrative coordinator's supervision of department heads. And the question arose, does that mean that the department head serves at the pleasure of the administrative coordinator? Or does that appointment have to come back to the county board to dismiss a department head? And it wasn't clear from the job description. Whereas 59.18 dealing with county administrator says very clearly that that department head serves at the pleasure of the county administrator. And so that's an example where, and you can say that the county used imprecise language in the job description. They did. And it could have been clarified just by using more precise language in the job description. But that's the sort of example that I would see arise where unless we are very, very clear in the job description what authority the administrative coordinator has, it's going to be difficult to replicate what's in 59.18 clearly in statutory language.
So it's not that you couldn't delegate the responsibility, it's that you have to be very clear in the job description. It was a
does.
job description problem, I mean, obviously, like you said, it's a cleaner way to do it, but it's not impossible to delegate the same responsibilities.
That's entirely true, except for,
Okay.
again, I'll just bring up the examples of human services and county highway. If you look at 83.015 of the statutes, under subsection 2, it talks about the powers and duties of the county highway committee. And then you'll see in that subsection 2 a long list of other statutes that are referenced that a highway committee has authority to undertake. In other words, the power that is in those other statutes vests with the county highway committee. And then you've got another subsection of that statute. Oh, in counties with an executive or an administrator, that power is exercised by the highway commissioner. And so I have seen disputes arise where essentially there are people on the county board that say, wait a minute, as a highway committee, we're just supposed to be policy oversight. That's our expectation for all committees within the county, is that it's policy oversight. Day-to-day operational authority, that goes to the administrative coordinator. And that's where we say, well, not so fast, because if you look at 83.015 sub 2, the highway committee does retain operational authority, and that's by statute. So that's just another example.
Well,
I'm not sure on where on this list we're at.
We just start.
I didn't confuse
descriptions
everything.
And mentioning our markups.
So I like the Monroe and the Marathon one. Yes, that's. And they were both county administrator one. Turns out if that's like a place to vote. But that was just from my personal perspective, or I did kind of write down the parts that I thought were important, if we want to talk about it per like topic, like whether or not we should manage department heads, the core evaluation program, strategic plan, economic development. Like, do you want to tackle it from how you feel about the core duties, or do you want to try to find one to start with an example and what would like and feel like
I mean,
the big apple to.
yeah, either I kind of took out certain sections of each one of the job descriptions that I thought were important.
That might be simpler if we talk
You know,
about, like,
we could go through each one individually and that's why, I highlighted them up two on separate ones, but I guess main thing was,
staplers, she said.
you
Yeah, I
know,
know.
providing.
Find stapler.
Yeah.
Was the marathon, was that the one that had the county manager on?
That's the,
And I do have a question also. I only saw one date. It's in Adams in one, back 20 years ago, 2015. Are these not gone over and looked at and maybe revised after, well, after a certain amount of time, or are all of these years old?
Yeah, in other words, are they current, Sarah? Maybe that's a question for you as to what they.
Yeah,
I
they're
didn't-
all they're within the last few years. Now, I put them in there, not because these might be the most current for these counties, but because they provide, food for thought in terms of types of functions you may wish to have this position undertake. So, that's, so it was put in there for, not for, we're adopting this one, boom, we're done. Although you could, but, just more so to give you some idea. And if there's something you particularly like, we can ask the county if they have updated it. But these are all within the last few years.
I'll just note from the Adams County one, I know that is the current one for administrative coordinator, but they switched to administrator in January. So I know that they are still working on the job description for county administrator. I'm actually working with them on that. So that one is out of date only because they switched to county administrator.
I think if we're gonna do, I don't know how you wanna do, but individual, like bullet points. Just to go down through them. And I think the one thing that I seen in almost all of them was like direct oversight oversees and directs the fiscal management of the county, including formulation and preparation of the county budget. Almost all of them working responsible for directing and supporting the finance management, the coordination, preparation, submission, administration of an annual budget. I mean, almost all of them had strong budgetary and items in their budget. And I think that even with the county board and some members coming and going and it's always changing, you need some person that's at the top that keeps track of the finances, yearly, not.
And some of them went as far as to say that they, made sure the department heads were sticking to their budget and bringing issues ahead of time rather than.
Regular updates to the point on the budgets. So, but one of the things I was confused about too is if these counties have like finance directors and HR directors, because in some of them, it
Question I had on. Some.
administrative coordinator or county administrator, or whatever, is expected to be the HR director and the finance director as well, or if they're overseeing that position.
And there are certain positions within these counties that are what Sarah and I would call dual positions. And I don't have the whole list of counties here, but I know in Trempealeau County, for example, it's a combined administrator HR coordinator or HR director position. I know in Barron County, it's an administrator finance director. Or is that Price, Sarah? That's Price County that has that, isn't it? Is it Barron? It might, one of them. Barron, I know, is the former finance director of the county. Oh, it's Burnett that has
I'll say it's
combined
Burnett.
administrator HR. But I thought there was one that had combined administrator and finance director. That might be Langlade. Because Jason was the finance director and then he was made administrator, finance director, if I recall. So there is opportunity to combine those functions depending upon need and depending upon workload. And if you're interested in doing that, I would suggest that Sarah and I can go back and find some of those job descriptions. If you tell us, hey, we're interested in finding out more about combined administrator, HR administrator, finance director, we can find that for you.
I'd be interested in that.
Find if those counties where they're doing that, that stuff was falling through the cracks, having a defined role.
Sure.
Can you remind me what you have now? I know you have an HR director. Do you have a finance director?
It is
Well, it's
vacant.
vacant right now.
Okay. Okay.
The finance director? Finance director? Nation.
So, but to your point, Kurt, it was confusing or fuzzy to me reading through these, whether it was like an oversight of that person or that responsibility of that. Like I wrote that on a comment on a lot of them, like.
Well, some of them maybe be more like, you know, you have a plant manager or something, you got departments underneath them, and the department head might bring somebody up. They still work with HR on disciplinary action, but they're not necessarily involved in the day-to-day of what job performance. Maybe the administrator is one step above. I did have a question on, like, oh, it says on, number 2, it's the subject to county board confirmation, appoints, supervises county department heads, except those elected or where statute appointments should be made. Officers, the county board or chairperson, other boards and commissions. Is that saying that like right now, our appointments go to the county board, we have an interview and committee ahead of time for at least department heads. Well, actually, right now, I think for everything. But this makes it sound like the administrative coordinator itself make the appointment and then just get approved by the county board.
That's
Yep.
for Monroe, and Monroe is an administrator, and that's by statute. And so you could define the process. If you had an administrative coordinator and wanted to provide authority to the administrative coordinator as it relates to hiring, firing, whatever, you can define the process. It could be administrative coordinator solely, it could be administrative coordinator with board confirmation, it could be a combination. All I am suggesting, and I think Sarah would echo this, is we want to make sure it's clear. That's the only thing.
So with the administrator's position, each new election, they're the ones that appoint the members to the boards and the committees and the elected, or who does that?
There's a
Administ-
difference. Yeah, there's a difference between a board committee and a board or commission. When we talk about a board committee, for example, this ad hoc committee, your finance committee, your other committees of the county board, those are all controlled by the board. The administrator does not make those appointments. When we talk about the health board, human services board, there are any number of boards or commissions identified in statute, that's the administrator appointment subject to board confirmation.
I don't understand that.
That was on that.
Yeah. So your standing committees of
Marathon.
your boards
Yeah.
are still appointed by your committee on committees or your board chair, however it is you currently do it within your county.
Correct.
Okay.
But some of those committees have like citizen, right?
Right.
And so then county administrator or administrative coordinator.
I think Andy was clarifying some boards and commissions, like, Andy, is one of your examples like the Veteran Service Commission?
Yep, exactly. Human Services Board. That's another example. Citizen members on that board. And the reason that I think, and I don't know what the legislature was thinking, but I think what the legislature was thinking is that with a county administrator model, those boards or commissions don't have any real financial authority or oversight responsibility. They can't commit county funds. It would require action of the county board with a budget or a budget amendment. When we're talking about county board committees, the finance committee, for example, would have budgetary authority if you granted them that authority. So we want to make sure that we don't delegate, so to speak, responsibility over the county's finances to an entity that is not comprised fully of county board members and is not, I guess, seated by the county board itself. So it's the boards and commissions that are unrelated to the county board itself that are administrator appointments. Again, subject to board confirmation.
Okay, so should we, I don't know how, you just wanna go through each job description individually, or did I think everybody?
Keep going.
Yeah.
So you think it's in finance, right?
I think that there should be some heavy influence on finance, whether it's a combined position or at least the administrator or the administrative coordinator, however that goes, has the oversight of the finance. So it's not, so we don't have an instance, and we're in July. I'm being told that there's surplus money in the budget, unless I misunderstood, because I was a fairly new board member, but there's surplus money. And then October, we're eliminating 6 people because we're short money. I just don't think that should happen again. And it needs to be one person that you go to and you can point your finger at, say, explain this to me. And I didn't know who that person was, at that time, but there should be one person that you should be able to go to and say, explain this to me. So.
I agree with you.
I mean, I don't know. So I'm all for giving raises, and I said that even at that meeting, but I don't want to give it when it's going to cost 6 people to lose their position and that. Anyway, so I think that
Against the limited positions, that the finances should be able to find it at somebody.
well,
We could do like open positions where there's not people.
yeah, whatever, just attrition and.
So
But-
oversee the
But that could
budget.
be kind of
Budget
put into this too,
compliance.
because a lot of these say that the administrative coordinator, administrator would make suggestions about filling vacancies and suggestions about jobs that may or may not be warranted. So I think if we had somebody in charge of the budget and in charge of positions, they could kind of use that as one of their tools to eliminate positions, like you said, through attrition, rather than all of a sudden we're in December and getting 6 people that have jobs. Take them on.
But I just think that we need,
See budget and budget compliance. And update board regularly on the finances.
And I think that's important.
I mean,
Update.
Yeah, Vernon County responsible for directing and supporting the finance manager with the coordination, preparation, submission, and admission of the annual budget. Monroe County as oversees and directs the finance and financial management of the county, formulation and preparation. Toronto County, the administrative coordinator is responsible for overseeing all aspects of finance and accounting for the county, including budgeting, spending, investing, revenue streams, debt insurance, contracts, leases, auditing, and safeguarding. I mean, pretty much every one of them have something like that in there, and whatever language you would like to use, but
It put somebody in charge of answering if the budget's what, or the finances are screwed up.
And then along those lines, a lot of them had capital improvement projects too, right? That position is in charge of kind of like the long range plan and all the capital projects and the bonding.
Yep.
And then in the marathon ones, at Phil's point, it had analyzes and recommends the county organizational structure, the program development, facilitate effective services and recommendations as there. There's and maintains a county long-range comprehensive planning program. County.
In the process of. We also needed a strategic plan, so here's my plug for that.
Yes, yeah, I read strategic planning and organizational.
What's that
Like 15 or 20 years old.
means, so.
So that was in the Richland. The Richland one, it had that, I think, good language about the strategic planning and organizational improvement.
also the preparation and submission of the annual budget and capital improvement program. Executes the adopted budget and sharing those expenditures.
Sarah writes down.
Sarah's diligently
Writing it
picking
down, okay.
So,
'Cause I'm glad I'm not writing it down. This is a lot of random thoughts here.
Yeah.
This is making sense to you, Sarah?
This is making sense to me. I'm just writing it all down.
All right.
so then along with the supervision of the budget and the finances, I think, somehow, the department heads, who do the department heads report to?
their oversight committee.
It's just their oversight committees, which, like I said, once again, changes every 2 years or can change every 2 years. And so.
Or it changes from committee to committee, it's the consistency of it.
That's, every election, it can possibly change, and then there's no continuity, there's no. Whatever, I got, working at the city, every time a new mayor comes in, you have to completely start from scratch again, and it's difficult. It's nice to have some continuity. That, that person that knows that you're a hard worker, or you're not a hard worker, or whatever, that they're in the building all day long. So having some direct supervision, for department heads, I think is necessary too,
So,
That's in here, there's a lot of,
a lot of
there's
those.
a lot of that in there too, yep.
Seems like almost all of the jobs.
Yep.
It does say on for one. You're right. Straight up in personnel policies. That was one of those ones where I was, if HR would. Now policies. County manager for Dunn County. Important bullet point. Responsibilities. It's the one that says county, it's the only one that reads county manager.
Yeah, she's the administrative coordinator, county manager.
Oh,
She's on our admin.
that was another.
But they have,
question.
I know they have some people in the fire department.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I guess they do that together.
Yeah, yes.
I guess that's one that, not. But I like the station.
Personnel.
Right, the policies, yeah, for personnel. They get to hear option. Fair coordinator, but I want to call that. Ag as far as.
I typically write different colors. Like, for instance, Act 235, I just wrote that policy. I mean, I do write policy. and
Policies, yeah, but I would say when it comes to personnel, put that bag mostly on it, on Ashley to write it and with your input. Well, make sure it's happening.
So I think we're kind of going through C, on 2C, which are functions in the job description that will benefit Russ County and provided by an administrative coordinator. I think we kind of went through some finance and some department head supervision. Policy, is there anything else that's people feel strongly has to go in there?
So I had a question about insurance and risk management, 'cause that came up. How does that work out?
Right now, that is a function primarily held by the finance. I've not had a finance director, though. That is now primarily on me. Asset management, so the finance department will send out every year annually a list of all of our assets. We leave that up to the department heads. They need to report to what their assets are. We need to ensure that we have proper insurance coverage on them. We had a snafu last year or the year before on an underground storage tank that was never reported to us. So that is something that we had to handle. In terms of risk management, I guess with facilities, that's something that we've been tackling together. Pump injuries, things like that, helping our processes improve. I mean, historically, that's been leading that charge with input coming from finance and input from HR.
Right, so that seemed like something that should be managed county-wide.
Otherwise, like right now, we are so siloed in this building that like the basket weaving department has a significant injury and she doesn't hear about it until 6 days later. And then all we can say to them is like, you follow our policies.
Right.
Much all we can do. That makes it really difficult because there might be something that she's like, right away, that machine isn't running anymore, or where were your gloves, things, little things like that.
Insurance and finance department. You would, some of these reference to that become a department head. Waiting, find another department head in case of a vacancy, which I think is the logical thing that somebody has to be in charge of the department. There's a interview. That's there since you would oversee the department anyways.
So just the interim department head when the vacancy.
I think that's kind of how it works now
Is
anyways.
I've been the medical examiner, the forestry administrator.
We'll just put it in writing now for the.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing is that some of this is more of a assumption than a the job
Yep.
description.
I didn't see that in your job description, but I might have missed it.
It is not in my job description. And in fact, how our county works, or at least how Rich explained it to me, was I'm on the same level as a department head. So that doesn't make sense that those duties are just assumed by me. I'm at the same level and I don't really carry any authority. So, or are you stepping in and running a department when you don't have it?
Well, and that kind of goes back to the supervision of the department anyways, if that's that would have to change change that.
It should.
So the other thing that came up a lot too was the lead for county public relations, intergovernmental affairs, contract lease negotiation, county spokesperson, and monitoring the state legislator. Liaison officer, that's a contracting. Because now it seems like we have the chair be negotiate contracts, and so that's like another bucket or topic.
Yep.
I know when we were negotiating the open, I think John had to miss a lot of that was moved so fast in the building because I was on the computer and stuff like that and do anything without being off. So he was ended up missing a lot of.
So and in the end, it still has to be approved, but it's just giving that position the authority. And collecting, right? It seemed like that came up a lot. That was another like broad topic. Frequently.
Can them duties be given to an administrative coordinator? Or can they negotiate? I mean, or does that have to be an administrator?
No, an administrative coordinator can negotiate, that's fine. And I mean, I think the concern from an administrative coordinator standpoint is that we just ensure that whatever direction is given on negotiations is adequately clear. So that way the administrative coordinator knows exactly the parameters of what he or she can or cannot negotiate. But yeah, that can be delegated, absolutely.
Even when delegating the chair to negotiate with parameters anyways, I mean, we say stay within such and such a price. So I
Right.
think it would make a difference. And the administrative coordinator, and a lot of times we delegated administrative coordinator and the.
My apologies for having to backtrack, but I heard somebody suggest that we were going to have the administrative coordinator supervise department heads. What does that mean?
Well, that means you said that the administrative coordinator wasn't supposed to supervise department heads earlier, but I think we need, however it's laid out, whether it's an administrator or we need someone that's in direct supervision of department heads other than the committee, the oversight committee. I think we need somebody in the building that is overseeing department heads. That's just my personal opinion.
And let me just clarify too, I apologize if I was unclear, but it's in statute that the department head serve at the pleasure of the administrator. It's not in statute for administrative coordinator, but you certainly can delegate that function to the administrative coordinator. And my only caution here is that if we don't give the administrative coordinator some sort of authority to discipline department heads, it's really tough to supervise somebody. So I've seen that situation before too, where an administrative coordinator doesn't have the authority to discipline a department head. So a department head's like, well, I really don't care what you say. There's nothing you can do with me. And so I'm only encouraging you to think about that as you're describing what it is you want the administrative coordinator to do.
And would that come back to a lot of the department heads are appointed by the county board? So let's say the administrative coordinator says, okay, whatever department basket weaving is not doing their job. I want to write them up and stuff, and they go back and say, well, yes, I pick up 2/3 of the board. I can't get rid of it.
Right. And so
Some of the concern.
Yeah, so essentially the department head would have two supervisors, the county board or a county board committee, and then the administrative coordinator. And I think the system that works well is that if we have the administrative coordinator can impose discipline up to, let's say, 3 days suspension without pay. Anything more than that is a recommendation either to a committee or the full board, something like that. I've seen that work.
So move on to the
Yes.
topic.
Yeah, we have,
So the other one is economic development. Whether or not we want to include, because we have no person for economic development, so. Kelly, yeah, so is that?
So we did that, tourism the other day. Recommend personnel look at actually putting a full-time person in economic development. And then since then, we met with the company, Ashley and I did, CETA was it?
EDA.
That, does economic development. I, I've seen the ones in there too, but I do feel like for a long time in the economic development, and I think it's a full-time person job, but we should really be pushing for a lot more. And if you put
I get. it's
part-time
like a
position
company needs
into the,
paid to do this
yeah, if
job,
you
the
put
way
the-
we're making it.
yeah,
so.
if you put it in with all these other things that are in all these other ones, and I've seen some of them do that, I just think that not having enough energy to focus and really push that. I think it's a full-time position. We need somebody or a company or something, and I'm gonna be pushing for that. Just a heads up for you guys that it's as far as I can push it.
so,
And
a full-time economic development coordinator?
either that or there's a company we're looking at. A contracted company. One of the two. At the Joint Tourism Committee, we the personnel committee person. But then after meeting with that company, I want to go back and see what the rest of their pitch is first before we make that. And if we go with a contracted or a person, either one of them, I think we need something more than what we're doing right now, because we get a part-time, and for one, not enough hours in a day, but then two, in a part-time position, it's a rotating door. You get somebody, they're there for 6 months, a year, whatever, and it doesn't work. And to put it on administrative coordinator just becomes, I think it
Too
needs to
much.
be a priority. And if they're taking care of finance and everything else, it's not gonna be, they're not gonna have the effort. Fantastic job.
Totally agree. Yes.
So I would say you could still put administrative coordinator, like department head or something above them, or I would say that put it as a side note. Administrative coordinator.
Agree. And then. I mean, we need an economic development person, but I don't think the two jobs would be comparable.
Yeah. It'd just be much that you wouldn't be able to.
Do a good job at either one of them.
Yeah.
Right, that's good, as long as it's a
Right,
priority.
right.
No,
I've been talking about this
No,
for the last little bit, so I was all like,
I 100%.
we need to
agree
do
with you.
more.
I just
So,
want to make sure it's
Yep.
included.
yeah,
as part of
I think that's where this county's lacking also. You can kind of see that.
So then the other thing I had on my list was how to evaluate that position, right? So a lot of times it came up as an executive committee who evaluates. So can you tell us a little more about that? How is the executive committee?
So the question is, what is the role of the executive committee in evaluating performance of the administrative coordinator? Is that right?
How is that how is that selected? How does that process work?
And so, forgive me, I don't know the exact committee structure in Rusk County. Do you have an executive committee?
no, we don't.
So in
Okay.
other counties where they talk about, what's
So-
the evaluation process for a administrative coordinator, county administrator in other counties that works well?
And so-
Right now, just a reminder, right now, our administrative coordinator reports to two committees, so they do report descriptions to personnel and to finance.
And what I have seen that works well is that you have one committee that the administrative coordinator reports to, because it goes along with my theme that you want to have one supervisor, so to speak, so one committee. And the reason counties use executive committee many times is that it's a cross-section of board leadership and committee leadership. So you'll have, for example, board chair, board vice chair, chair of finance, chair personnel, chair of, some other committee, call it highway, that comprises the executive committee. Because that's a good cross-section of all of the different areas that the board deals with and that the county deals with. And so that cross-section is able to evaluate the administrative coordinator across all functions of the administrative coordinator's responsibilities. And so that's why you see the executive committee being that committee. I'm not saying you have to have an executive committee, but I think it's important that you have that cross-section in the evaluation process so that you have an adequate understanding of all of the different areas that the administrative coordinator touches within the county.
And that's the same process for an administrator as an administrative coordinator, same.
Typically, yes.
So right now, don't we have chair of some of those committees? It's chair of the board, vice chair anyways, right? So that creates a problem.
So John was the finance chair. Chair.
By our ordinances. The board chair automatically sits on.
He automatically,
But he
he's
doesn't have
not
to be
automatically the
chair.
chair of
No,
finance.
no,
Right.
but the chair automatically goes
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. So.
But
so we-
he was talking about the finance chair, board chair, the vice chair, highway chair. So,
It's the
personnel.
board chair, the board vice chair,
Personnel.
yeah, personnel, finance.
So I think other than finance,
So you
when
need
John
5 different people.
was here, that there was a person was on. But I mean, you could take, like, if that was the case, you could always take like a vice chair,
The
right?
vice chair.
You know, and that way you got.
And what else does the executive committee do besides oversee this position?
Yeah, and that's a tough one because it varies county by county. In some counties, they have an executive committee that also handles personnel issues. So they become like the de facto personnel committee. In other counties, the executive committee serves as the finance committee. And so it really kind of depends on what you do. I certainly don't want to add to the committee structure in Rusk County. And so I would take a look at the duties that you have either in finance or personnel and say, where would evaluation of the administrative coordinator be best suited based upon committee composition? And if you need to change committee composition, that's fine. But I would suggest at that point, you would call it either the executive/finance committee or executive/personnel committee, something of that nature. I think that would make sense.
We have a residency requirement.
Workers.
No.
I thought that residency requirements were not allowed other than for emergency responders.
Because we just took that out of the pool captain.
Or service stuff.
And
We got-
even our sheriff Wallace allows
Yeah.
out of county
County.
police.
Yeah, so I don't.
Oh, they can, but
Oh, I don't know, like I said.
They tax on that.
Oh.
And I think Jeff right now, his policy is he only lets them 15 miles.
Yeah.
It's the county line.
Yeah, because you have to have a recall at a certain.
Yeah, the expectation is that if an emergency call comes in,
How much I know.
So our residency requirements,
Yes, they are prohibited by statute. That's correct.
From that at the city one.
do you guys have a? You're strict.
Yeah, the county board
Yeah,
still has
for other-
residency requirements.
Okay.
But I mean,
That's
like,
for
the city,
sure.
Staff.
the city tried pushing it for the staff at one time.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
We can only hire people that live in the city.
Oh,
Staff?
wow. It's your pool a little.
But like, that's against the law. A particular mayor. So whereabouts are we at on the agenda if we're even following it, Linda? I think we went through the Yeah, I think so too.
benefit.
I think Sarah with questions 2C and D was really aiming at how do we build out the perfect job description in the eyes of this ad hoc committee for Russ County. And I don't know if you've made a decision on administrator versus administrative coordinator, but depending upon that decision, of course, you'd want to, there are elements in the administrative coordinator job description you'd want to include that you wouldn't have to include for administrator because it's contained in statute. So I think really from the perspective for this committee, it's what do you want out of this position? What does perfection look like? And then how can we pull from elements, perhaps from some of these other job descriptions that Sarah shared to build that perfect job description?
I think that we've made a substantial list of what we want for sure in the job description.
I think we've got like the ideas of what we want, maybe not the language, but I think the
Right.
ideas are there.
I would agree with that, yep. But a lot of these have lots of verbiage, but they are just,
Finance, being in charge of the finances.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's just lots of verbiage to go in there, yeah.
There's some, could we be looking at possibly getting some of these committees time at this point or no? We've got a whole lot of them.
You do. But I think some of that'll might change once the come up with the job description that'll have maybe some different authorities that could take some of the responsibility of some of the committees that we currently have. That a fair statement?
For what it's worth, I remember having this discussion with the board in, I think it was early December, about the progression here. Once you decide on administrator, administrative coordinator, and then the job description, the role of your administrator or administrative coordinator, then you'll be able to develop board rules and committee structure around that job description to make sure that they fit. So I think that's a really good point that yes, you're going to have to take a look at committee structure. But I think that you don't want to do that before you look at administrator, administrative coordinator role.
So you're kind of saying we have to decide whether we're going to go with administrative coordinator or administrator. I mean, then you can't do a job description until you decide which one you're going to go with.
I think that's
For the
right.
most part.
And of course, this committee is making a recommendation to the full board who makes the ultimate decision. And so I think that when we talk about what are the attributes that we want this position to have, if we list out the attributes and say, well, gee, this looks like an administrator. Why wouldn't we just make this an administrator? There you have your recommendation. And vice versa, you may say, look, I'm not comfortable making a recommendation to the board that we give somebody sole authority over the firing of a department head. That doesn't make me feel good. Well, then you need to look at administrative coordinator. And so I think it just depends on what this committee views as their recommended route to the county board, and then have a job description that basically contains the elements associated with that recommended route.
I guess still trying to catch what the next step would be. Did you come up with?
Well, so Sarah, we listed off, right, what we thought our priorities. And
Yes.
so.
Yes, I have a
based
whole
on-
list of priorities that you guys talked about today. Plus, we have your discussion from your prior meeting about the items that you thought were important as well to the county. So we can take a look at those two documents, today's discussion and your discussion from your last meeting.
Yes.
That gives us some
It's
direction.
hard for me
Now,
not
whether
to-
we write it for an
Yes.
admin coordinator or an administrator, I mean, it gets
What does
written
it
differently.
sound like what does it sound like we're building? Because to me, it still seems pretty nuanced between the two. I get that the county administrator is defined in statute what that person does. But I also feel like I hear Andy say that basically delegate everything that's a county administrator position into an administrative.
Not quite everything, right, Andy? I mean, we talked
Not-
about the 4623, the 83015, those functions.
That's right, not quite everything.
Okay, so it seemed like one of the nuances I heard here was the idea of the amount of discipline that the position could have over department heads, like Phil, you mentioned, somebody suggested a limited amount of disciplinary action. To me, it makes a lot more sense for that position to be able to do discipline over department head than the committees, because we don't know. Somebody comes to work every day, we don't know all the details of the day-to-day operation. But I also feel like there's concern among the board of giving that full authority to that position. So if we did like this limited disciplinary action and then it's back to the executive, it seems like that needs to be. Is that right?
I think that's right. So if you look at the statute that relates to county administrator, it specifically says that a person serves at the pleasure of the administrator. All I was suggesting with county administrative coordinator is that you can temper that. I mean, you could say that a person serves at the pleasure of the administrative coordinator, or you could say that the administrative coordinator has disciplinary authority up to, for example, 3 days unpaid suspension. Any greater discipline requires the approval of, let's say, the personnel committee. I'm just throwing it out as an example. You could do that. My only point was I want to be clear on the delegation of the authority to the administrative coordinator. And I also want to make sure that that delegation has teeth, so to speak, so that the department head knows that that is indeed a supervisory relationship. Different counties do it different ways. I think we're saying the same thing if I'm hearing you.
In the personnel policy, is there like step one discipline where there's a written letter reprimand in the file, and then step two discipline is it can be a 3 days off or it can be a second letter. I mean, that's how our
Yeah,
policy.
we have a verbal, a written.
So yeah, so there's a written, so the administrative coordinator could follow the policy up to step 3 or whatever. I'm not sure what it is.
No termination or
Yeah.
something, and that could.
Well, the board does or something.
The board, not a committee.
Well, for department head, yeah, for individual.
Department head would be the board.
Individual employee, they could probably fire with the department head, right? I think the concern is the
Department head.
not the individual.
Yeah, like appointed department heads or whatever.
Yeah, and I think we'd be back to the policies we're talking. This board meeting. There.
Look like you have something like.
No, I agree with Andy. So like this position have fiscal oversight and be responsible for answering to the budget. Need to give this position the authority to get a department head spending under control. If that position has no teeth to do that, then you're gonna end up firing this position left and right because, do you know what I mean?
No, yeah, you have to, I agree that you have to have,
Tools.
if you're gonna supervise somebody, I 100% agree, you have to be able to make them accountable for their actions.
Yes.
I totally agree. Like I said, I don't know if that would be all the way up to firing, but I mean, I don't feel comfortable myself firing somebody that goes to the committee, but I can give 3 days off on my own. But in our policy, so I don't think that that's uncalled for. As long as you have it documented.
Right. We'll say that the fact that our board is responsible for terminating people, the only 2 grievances that we have right now are due to, are due to statutory errors that were made during that process, which wouldn't happen.
Or shouldn't.
Or shouldn't happen, right? But unfortunately, that's the reality of where we are right now is because you're bringing the matter in front of a board, because you're bringing it in front of a committee, because you now have open meetings, because you now have all these statutes to follow. Not that the terminations weren't justified or whatever, where we're tripping up is on some of those procedural issues. So that's just another layer of complexity that bringing everything to boards and committees as in terms of discipline and
The
termination.
procedural issues, is that because first rather than the board.
There are several issues. A lot of them revolve around open meeting. Just a note, because a lot of counties, and Andy, jump in if I'm wrong on this, but a lot of counties don't bring like general terminations to a full board situation where we go through that 1B hearing and things like that.
What about?
I would very much prefer it not go to a full board. Here's why, is that we're required by law to have a grievance procedure, and the last body that hears any appeal of a grievance is the county board. So I don't want to have the county board in a position where they're making an initial determination on termination, and then they ultimately have to hear the appeal. So
Do you have
in that
that?
circumstance, I would, if we're going to have board involvement, it has to be at the committee level. The problem I've got with that is that I don't know that the committee has enough information to make an informed decision about what should happen with a termination. So if we are in a position where we say, okay, look, we're not comfortable just relinquishing full authority to an administrator or administrative coordinator to make a termination decision, I think it ought to be a recommendation from the administrative coordinator or the well, not the administrator, that by statute, they'd make that decision. But it would be a recommendation of the administrative coordinator to a committee, but not the department head's home committee. The reason I say that is because oftentimes the department head has a really good relationship with that home committee. So I want it to be a committee that is responsible overall for the county and listens to a recommendation from the administrative coordinator and then makes a decision. That's why I think you see some other counties as well have an executive committee in that role.
That kind of how the personnel committee works in a way, terminations go to personnel.
But if you read our grievance procedure, like Andy said, it goes to them, comes back to them. That's where these issues are coming up, is that have someone hearing the information, making that initial determination, and then a little farther down the grievance procedure, there's supposed to be that objective party hearing this for the first time. We've already ruled on it. So if I were to terminate you, Phil, and you grieved my decision, I'm no longer involved in that. You're grieving that to people who've never heard your situation before.
Fired.
Well, that makes sense. It doesn't make sense that you grieve back to the party.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
It is really hard when you're not in the day-to-day to try to tell a committee in a certain amount of time, like everything that is happening, that's gone on.
So then who hires the administrative coordinator?
Executive
committee.
Yeah. And the executive committee does
So-
annual.
What do they base it on though? Like just.
Yeah, like the budget's 2 million in the hole, something like that, or. You know,
Because if you're giving them the full power and the authority to do something like about the budget and they don't, then you're.
I said last time, yeah, I do feel pretty strongly that, I mean, I'm just one opinion, but we need some sort of performance review system in place, an annual. And that was in here a lot too, establish and supervise employee evaluation process. Need some sort of a performance review process annually, semi-annually, in the middle of the year,
Yeah, and to
a
have,
check, and then the end of the year.
to have one person doing that rather than each department. One department head might give all A's and the next one might.
but the department head would still have to do their employees. It wouldn't be the administrative coordinator that was doing. They'd just be doing the department head.
Great way to work.
I know what
You know what I mean? Because I'm a
Yeah.
critical person. I might.
You're not gonna give any A's no matter
I give
what.
all B's and yeah, everybody, as long as you didn't get a C, that means you did good. But the next person might just say, showed up to work, here's an A.
But if they do it in conjunction with HR, and HR is,
Like right now, they're, yeah.
yeah, the role that
But if you start this evaluation process, and I don't know how, we don't do it at the city, but you know, in the Army, you have your NCOURs, non-commissioned officer evaluations, and then you have your yearly one, you just set your goals for the next year. And then that's how you're evaluated on. When next year comes, you look at your one from last year and what the goals were set and if you achieve them goals or not. And then, you know, your evaluation's based on that. So there's quantifiable, you have to come up with quantifiable.
Than just
Yeah.
check
Yeah.
one more year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more than you showed up for work every day, you know, 2 minutes or something. I mean, yeah, it's good employee evaluations are difficult. I'm sure they're difficult. They can be time consuming and they're difficult, but once you got a process started, it would be a process to get started.
For
Yeah,
it gets
exactly.
going.
I think that years down the line, it's like clarify with a lot of our these description is what our role and responsibility is. I think a lot of people in the building are going through what I'm going through right now. Like, job description says this, but I've worked here since 2004. And this is what I actually do. I mean, we have so much work ahead of us.
Descriptions too that says to do what your department at is.
Other duties
Like
as
committees
assigned.
asking because
Say all.
in the private sector, if I pull this nonsense about, well, that's not really my job description, my boss will say, you signed up to do what I told you to do. If you
Right.
don't like it, leave. But I hear all the time, well, I got asked to do something extra. I'm here already, but now I want a stipend for this. Well, if you're getting paid for 40 hours, you're expected to, work. You know, I guess it could be a little bit more.
But it's up to the department head to all of that or.
And you're right, that's a long process. It would,
I didn't mean to like rain on your parade, but we have
No.
so much other things like
I agree.
that is a good part of having a well-functioning county, yes, but a lot of the people here are gotta get to clarify roles.
So that would be something for the executive committee to evaluate on the administrator, the administrative coordinator in their job performance of how far have you gotten along in the job performance evaluations of getting, you know, whatever. I mean, that, you're right. It's gonna take years to get set up, but it would.
I'd say we give them a month.
Cause I get that out of one of these, establish and supervise the evaluation process. That there is a process to evaluate.
And then what do you do with those evals? Are they tied to raises? Are they,
Yes.
what are you doing with
It
them?
could be. When again, in the long term, they could be.
Yeah.
Performance-based increases, yeah.
Give somebody reason.
So do you guys still need us to decide on which way we want to go, or feel like you can kind of put together what we have and that next?
Well, I think, you know, when we talk about next steps and we look at the agenda, for example, identify the next steps, that's number 3. I think that if the charge from this committee to us is to pull some elements from the job descriptions and put that into one page, one format, one document, then you can look at that and say, okay, this makes sense. You tinker with that, so to speak. And then you can make the decision, do we want an administrator or administrative coordinator based upon what we want to happen? So maybe it makes sense that we do that. Sarah and I do a little bit of homework on pulling that information out, putting it in one spot. We get together as a committee again. You take a look and say, yep, there's our list. That's what we want our person to do. And then you make the decision, is that an administrator or an administrative coordinator? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you give us a copy of the statute too, or when you gave us that presentation in December?
Uh-huh.
Those slides where you broke down the difference? I think that would be helpful to go over that.
Yeah, I can do that. I think,
I mean, I guess I can read the statute myself.
well, no, I know, let me coordinate that with Ashley. I'll get that information to you.
It was so-
Well, I think there's I can't remember if it was Von Briesen or Wells Wiley and Prent had if you Google it, they have a really good presentation on, I just Googled it or something, and they come up and it was a PowerPoint presentation or whatever that was on this same subject, and it was very interesting.
Oh, okay.
It was either one.
But that is on the Z Drive. That presentation Andy gave is on the Z Drive, County Board 24.
Just a question. So I know you mentioned some of these counties that have an administrative coordinator, have an administrator. You see any counties going the other direction from administrator to administrative coordinators that always a move to administrator?
No, it's not always. Vernon County made the switch back to administrative coordinator after having an administrator. I think that was a problem that they had with the person who was filling that role, and they decided they wanted to move back to administrative coordinator. We have had counties over the years, take a look at that question. But I would say that's the minority. The majority of the switches go from administrative coordinator to administrator. Again, it's just like I've said before, it's much clearer in terms of roles and responsibilities.
Well, and whatever we do, we should be based on not a person, but what the best job description is. Like, so
Right.
if you say that and counties went back just because of who they had in that position previously, that's not necessarily logical to say. Put
No,
a
I would
position
agree.
and then you expect the person in that position to fulfill those duties rather than changing job descriptions.
No, I would
every
agree.
person.
I would agree. And I think there are counties out there as well that have administrative coordinators, full-time coordinators that function an awful lot like an administrator, and it works because of a good relationship between that person and the board. And so, yeah, you shouldn't let personality or person get in the way of a good job description and clear delegation, clear roles, clear responsibilities. I agree.
Okay. I think we're at where you are going to take all of our bullet comments, all of our discussion and put it into a rough draft of a job description.
Mhm.
And then after reviewing that, we will decide if it leans more towards a administrator or a coordinator.
And then we can, whatever they put together, then we can start peeking to. Making
Correct, to fill in other spots.
small stuff. Draft. And then determine what we would be towards administrator.
So is that our number 3, identify the next steps then? Does that fulfill that?
I think it does, unless there's anything else the committee would like us to take a look at.
I don't, not at this time. I don't have anything.
How long will that take?
I think if we put a meeting in the next 2 to 3 weeks, that's fine.
A month is good.
Yeah, I'm out the first 2 weeks of.
Oh, we've got all sorts of spring breaks and stuff like that coming up, don't we? So it might be good to push it out about a month. Maybe the week of the 14th or 21st of April.
The 21st is right after Easter, so.
14th, they got them at 3. What was the other date?
21st. You said that.
Oh, he just said the week of, not.
They go with one.
14th, 15th, then. He said 17th, 3.
Close on the 17th and the 18th is Good Friday.
So
Get down for all these holidays, like the post office.
So what, like,
I guess the 21st works. It's the day after Easter.
that's 3rd Monday, so that would be the same thing. That'd be a month, like the 3rd Monday. That'd work for me. 21st would.
Like that reserved room.
3:30 for you, Phil?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
3:30 on
Oh,
the
3:30.
21st, is that what I'm hearing?
It's okay, we might not be back in the morning. Certainly can't be back by.
So April 21st at 3:30.
Terrific. Does that work for you okay, Sarah?
Me?
Sarah.
Sorry.
Your code name Sarah.
I'm used to Zoom, so I keep,
I don't know if you want me to call you Sarah, I'll
trying
call
to
you Sarah.
unmute a different
John,
spot, but yeah, that works.
That works okay.
So, and can I just ask you too, do you have any other input? Anything that would be,
I mean, I went
No.
through and marked up what I already do and what I would like to be able to do, and a lot of this stuff I'm already doing. I really would like a chance. I think this position should have more input on the budget. I am bringing to finance, I think we won't be, are the only one on finance. I'm bringing to finance a budget report. And I'm hoping to kind of under my wing a little bit in the absence of a finance director.
I'd like to,
But if we don't, but if we don't change kind of setup here, once we get a finance director in, that's not my jurisdiction anymore.
and then the finance director is a department, so she doesn't necessarily track her county finances necessarily. I think that's kind of one of the biggest things we all think.
okay. And, well, wow, that hurt.
It sounded worse than I actually heard.
I think that a lot of this stuff, like I said, I'm really already doing, negotiating contracts on behalf of the county. I do that with Rich. But like I said, the problem is when I can't do anything without the board chair, I'm like, you look at my phone records, some days I was calling John like 16 times a day. Like, okay, here's what they countered back with. What do you do? Okay, now here's what they countered back with. What do you want to do? Like, that kind of stuff just like drags your time all day long. And I guess just reiterating, like Andy said, if you're going to ask this person to be responsible for all of this stuff again, they need to be able to enforce things and get spending under control or get personnel issues under control, or if operations are kind of going sideways, hey, we have to talk about what we're gonna do in terms of a plan. And right now isn't something that anyone in the building who
I think she pretty much summed it up, but from the personnel standpoint, I mean, HR is tasked with, you know, in the job description, my job description is great if there was any teeth behind it. I think of, you know, implementing policies and procedures, we can't any of that, like even if there are problems, if I were to Ashley right now as the administrative coordinator and be like, hey, we have all not following this. Still nothing we can do. And I think a lot of the employees starting to realize more and more nobody I'm accountable to that stuff. So
No, yeah, good. That's all good.
For the agenda item number 5.
But I think that brings us to agenda item number 5. Someone care to make a motion to adjourn?
Before we do that, can we make sure on the agenda
Oh,
it says
no.
election of temporary chair at the start of the meeting? That way we don't have to, we can avoid that entire discussion. How about that?
I think we'll do
we'll put on an actual election for chair and vice for you, Andy.
I love it. That would be awesome. That way we can avoid any uncertainty.
Yes.
We don't have. Option.
Oh. Just adjourn then, I guess.
Thank you, everybody. Great seeing you. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
too.
Thank you.
Take care.
For doing that, Kurt.
Oh, you guys did way more homework than I did.